gratitude. So as we always start our meditations, let's just start by gently closing our eyes or just finding a spot just to gaze at gently, somewhere on the floor, perhaps the chair in front of you. Just allowing yourself to sit quietly and at ease. Allowing your body to relax and allowing yourself to just become open. Allowing the breath to naturally flow. Now I invite you to begin to feel gratitude. To feel gratitude for all that you have in your life. Beginning to acknowledge gratitude for all of the people and things in your life that assist you on this joyful journey. For it is with gratitude that we remember the people, the animals, the plants, the creatures of the sky and the sea, the air and the water, fire and earth, all whose joyful exertion blesses our life every day. With gratitude, we remember the care and the labor of 1,000 generations of elders and ancestors who came before us. We offer our gratitude for the blessings of this earth that we have been given. For the family and the friends that we have been given. For our community, for the teachings and lessons that we have been given. We offer our gratitude for the life that we have been given. And just as we are grateful for our blessings, we are also grateful for the blessings of others. And as we enter into the silence, I invite you to continue to breathe gently. And I invite you to bring to mind someone or something that you care about. Someone or something to rejoice. Picturing them and feeling the natural joy you have for their well-being, for their happiness, and for their success. As we enter into the silence. And as we begin to bring our attention back to this moment and back to this room, we continue to hold those we care about in our consciousness, in our joyful consciousness. Each breath, I invite you to offer them your grateful, heartfelt wishes. May they be joyful. May their happiness increase. May they not be separated from their great happiness. And may their good fortune and causes for joy and happiness only ever increase. We affirm we are great joy. For that great joy, we are grateful. Namaste. And I invite you to join me in a new Lord's Prayer. Friday night, I want a handpan drum, I want a sun drum, and I want a tank drum. Don't know if my wallet can quite afford all of them at once, but I'm going to manifest it. Mindy, it's not too late to buy them for me for Christmas. She's shaking her head no, so anyway. I'll just continue to enjoy them here at the church. So it's already the fourth Sunday of Advent. And it's a good Sunday. It's joy. I mean, they're all good. But, today is a day where we can just whenever we have our special music later, maybe we can get some dancing going on in the aisles. And Ellen's not here, Ellen or Carl. But, yeah, they had some good dancing for us last week. So we'll have to have somebody jump in and take their place for us today. Tyrone, you look like you might be a good candidate to get up and do that for us. All right. So speaking of music, who in here does not like Christmas carols? Okay. All right, Scrooge? That's okay. That's all right. But I personally, I will speak for myself then. I personally love Christmas carols. And I know a lot of them tend to have some traditional, what we think of as traditional church language in them. But there's still something that I just find very comforting about Christmas carols. And one of my favorites happens to fit with our Advent theme of the day, and I bet you can guess what it is. Joy to the world. But who does not wish joy upon the world and upon ourselves? I don't think there's anybody that walks around their daily life saying, oh man, I do not want any more joy. We all want joy. Unless your name is Joy, but we all want joy. But we all tend to want joy because it feels great, right? And there's a reason we've heard the saying, jumping with joy. It's because when we feel it, we want to jump with it. When we feel joy, we're excited, we feel good, we feel possibly exuberant, and we feel on top of the world when we experience true joy. Now, our Advent booklet, our Unity Advent booklet, mentions joy. What a blessing it is to feel deep joy. The kind of joy when your heart could burst with fullness, when your body shimmers with quiet excitement, and the world feels more colorful, more alive, and all good things feel possible. So it sounds to me like joy lifts our vibration a bit, doesn't it? It uplifts me within my divinity, aligning me more with God or with the divine or whatever name you use for God, wouldn't you say? So you've heard me refer to our Unity 12 powers during our season of Advent. And now there's not a 12 power that specifically references the word joy, but we do have one for zeal, which is something that our Unity co-founder Charles Fillmore described as the ability to be enthusiastic, to be passionate, to start, and to motivate. Now, Mr. Fillmore, he was often described as just having a love and a zest for life. And he felt so passionate about zeal that he once stated at the age of 93, and if you've been around Unity any amount of time, you've probably heard this, but he once quoted, "I fairly sizzle with zeal and enthusiasm and spring forth with a mighty faith to do the things that ought to be done by me." It's a powerful statement. And I don't know what you think about it, but that sounds pretty darn joyful. And I'm also thinking I need to seriously get me a little bit of that zeal. What about you? If we are fairly sizzling with zeal and enthusiasm, we need to get a little bit of that. But it can start with joy. Maybe we can even change the saying, maybe he won't mind too much, if we change it to, we fairly sizzle with joy and enthusiasm. So it also makes me think about Christmas as a kid. Remember that? Remember the excitement that we would have building up to it? Wondering what was wrapped in those gifts under the tree or what Santa Claus was going to bring if we were at the age where we still believed in Santa. Now I know that I could barely sleep on Christmas Eve, and my sister was the same way, and my parents, of course, loved this. Because regardless of the time of night, and I say night because sometimes it was night, my sister and I would get up, we'd go in there, run to see what was under the tree, see what Santa brought us, and of course we just had to go running in there and tell my parents. And of course one time this was as early as 1 o'clock a.m. My parents are like, "Can't you go back in there and go to bed?" We're like, "We can't, we've got to play with all the stuff that Santa gave us." And it happened to be that one year Santa brought us a ping pong table. So all my parents hear is the clicks as the ball's hitting the table and the ball's hitting the paddles for probably a good 2-3 hours. But remember the joy we felt during that time. And there's been times I found myself kind of missing it, as I've grown into adulthood. But we don't have to remember just back to those feelings of joy that we felt when we were kids. We can still experience it regardless of our physical age. And I say physical age because around Christmas, sometimes I still feel like I'm 5. But joy works best when it's both experienced and shared. And you may be thinking, well, Evan, I don't always feel joy. How can I share something that I'm not always experiencing myself? Well, it's good news if you're thinking about that right now, because we're going to talk about it today. So even if you aren't seemingly having issues with feeling joy right now, it's likely you're going to at some point, just kind of the way this human experience rolls. But first, like anything, we have to make the conscious choice to want to experience more joy in our lives, to live out the joy that we truly are. So remember that we always have free will. In everything we do, we always have free will in this human experience. And within that free will, we always have choices to make. Likely every second of the day, there's some kind of choice we have to make. And joy, like anything else, must be a conscious choice. We may not always be feeling it, but we can always seek joy. We can find it. We can experience it. And then we can spread it on to others. And it doesn't just have to be the holiday season. It can be any time of the year. So how do we seek it becomes the question. We have to find it before we can experience and share it, because although we are joy, we don't necessarily always feel it. But how do we do this? How do we seek it? So in our Advent booklet, Unity Minister Reverend Colbert mentions that one of the first ways in which we seek joy is to listen to what is around you. So let's say at this point we've made the decision to seek joy. We're like, okay, we want some of that. We're going to find it. We're going to go down within, and we're going to bring that joy up to the surface. So now we take action on that desire, that conscious choice to be joy, and we become present. We become present to life, and we become present to the flow of life that is happening right here and right now. And one of the ways we do that is we become still and we listen. Now, have you ever just turned off all noise at all noise at home, such as the TV or the radio, and just listened? Just truly listen to the sounds that are around you, just the natural sounds maybe. Or you may even hear traffic, depending on where you're at. You may hear traffic, you may hear birds, you may hear people off in the distance talking and laughing. Whatever it is, it's likely to not be the sounds that you will often hear if you've got all this noise always playing in the background. And this takes me back. I remember to visiting my great-grandmother as a child. My great-grandmother was somebody that I was very blessed to have in my life into my early adulthood, and I still have very fond memories and often think back to my visits with her. And there were times I'd go to visit her and she'd have the doors open. It might be stifling in her apartment due to the Texas summer, but she would have the door open and she would bring me one of her famous glasses of iced tea. And we'd just sit in her living room and we would chat, and then we would just sit in silence often and just enjoy our time of sitting there being together. And that silence was beautiful. It was just a beautiful silence, and we didn't always have the need to fill it all with words. And one of the things I remember most about those visits was that she had this large clock on her wall, and we just hear it ticking during the silence. It got to where it was probably the most comforting sound to me in the world at that age, and even now, every time I hear the ticking of a clock, I'm taken back to those memories and those feelings, that comforting feeling, and it always just fills me with such great joy. And it's when we really take the time to sit and to just turn off any distracting noise, especially in today's world where we feel like we just always have to have something. Our phone or the radio or the TV, we always feel like we have to have something. So it's becoming ever more increasing in today's day and age to just really turn it off and to sit back and listen to life that's happening around us each and every moment. Now, another thing that our Advent booklet mentions is to watch for acts of loving kindness. So I remember many years ago when I was living in Austin, Texas, happened to be driving down the street, and it was a really cold day that year in Austin. It was like in the 20s. And I come up to this stop sign, and there's a man sitting on the side of the road that appears to be homeless. He doesn't have on a coat, he doesn't have a blanket, and he is sitting there literally shivering. Well, I notice that there's this pickup truck in front of me, and the driver also stops. I see the door open to his pickup. He gets out, he removes the coat that is on his body, and he wraps it around that man. And that act of loving kindness to another human being is something that I have never forgot. It was probably about 10 years ago, and it still sticks to me like it was yesterday. It's when we watch for and lay our focus on such acts of loving kindness. When we witness it's when we witness the true nature of spirit. It's the true nature of spirit at work. And we witness not only what it's like to show love, but to actually be love. And when we are in alignment with love, we can't help but experience the joy that we are. Now, another way in which we seek and attract joy is when we appreciate beauty. And what happens when we appreciate beauty? What happens when you're just maybe sitting in nature, or you see a beautiful bird fly up to the window? We experience joy, don't we? This takes me back. I remember it a lot long after Mindy and I first moved to Oregon. A friend of ours invited us on tours of the various waterfalls located out in a scenic area called the Columbia River Gorge. And during this tour, we stopped at this historic location called the Vista House. And the views from the Vista House are simply spectacular. It's not uncommon to see bald eagles out there flying or seeing their nests. But it was one of those moments that day in which the beauty just literally took my breath away. It was a sunny day, which can sometimes be rare in that part of the country, but it was a sunny, beautiful day. And just standing there and viewing the various colors and the trees and the waterfalls, the mountains, I just could not help but feel immense joy at that moment. Our Advent booklet mentions to behold star-etched patterns across the night sky, to feel the vast well-being of the universe. So whether our joy comes from the beauty in knowing that we are a vast part of this beautiful universe, or that spirit that God is infinite, allowing yourself the opportunity to just stop and to just really appreciate the beauty that's around you fills you with a joy that you cannot help but feel. So we've talked about some ways in which we can begin to seek joy and to really begin to feel it. But joy isn't something that we want to keep to ourselves. When I feel good and joyful, I want those around me to feel good and joyful as well. We want to share it with other people. We want to spread it. And we want for other people to also be able to take a part in that. But we have to share it. And joy is one of those things that's contagious. When we are around someone who's feeling joy, we often can't help but feel it ourselves. I dare you to be around somebody that's just jumping with joy and to sit there with a dour look on your face. It's probably not going to be possible. But how do we do that? How do we spread joy? Now, it doesn't require us to run out into the middle of the street and to burst into joyful song or act like we're taking part in a Broadway musical. We don't have to quite go to those lengths. You know the saying of it's the small things. Well, it is the small things in this case. So one of the things our Advent booklet mentions is to lighten a load, to listen with love, and to make a difference. So I don't know about anybody else out here, but there are days where nothing, and I mean nothing, sounds more enticing than going home, kicking off my shoes, putting my bottom in my chair, my feet on my ottoman, and sitting there with a good book or watching a good movie. And why is it? Why is that? What happens when we do those things? We relax. Again, something that's sometimes hard to do in this day of age with constant distraction. We relax. We let maybe some of those things that are bothering us in that day just kind of go in those moments. We lighten our load. What about also lightening our load on a spiritual level? Because that's kind of a physical thing, but what about a spiritual level? So I believe that we sometimes think of feeling tired, and we too often equate it to just being a physical tiredness. Maybe our feet or our backs hurt, or we didn't feel like we got enough sleep, and all we can think about is just going home and crawling into bed. I can't wait till I get home in a couple hours. I'm going to get in that bed and just shut the lights off and go to sleep. But what about lightening that load from a spiritual level as well? How can we also give the spirit that much needed rest that it also deserves? Sometimes it's quite like giving the physical body a rest. We can kick back with a good book. We can go home and hit the bed or sit in the chair, watch a good movie, or sometimes it is just getting that much needed sleep. Sometimes, however, it's also taking the time to listen to another person with love, with kindness. Just taking that moment to truly be present for another person. We all know that our minds tend to race a mile a minute, probably especially this time of year. Oh, did I pick this up from the grocery store? Did I buy enough gifts? Who else do I need to buy for? And the ego likes to always think ahead. And I know I don't have to tell you all that. We arrive at work and we automatically start thinking about lunchtime. Lunch comes in, and maybe I'm just talking about myself when I was in corporate America. But lunch comes and goes, and then we're watching the clock for quitting time. We get home and start thinking about all the chores we need to accomplish before we go to bed. And we do all of that, and we start thinking about the next day. Oh, what am I going to wear to work tomorrow? What am I going to do? But I think far too often, we do the same when speaking with other people. We begin conversations, and rather than just sitting there and truly listening, the mind starts to wander a little bit. Even if you're sitting there nodding, going, yeah. The mind is wandering. Things start to go through our minds, and that's just natural. What are we going to have for dinner? What groceries do I need to pick up on the way home to get things for that certain dinner? But what if we just paused for a moment and decided to truly be present to the conversation that we're in? Not thinking about our grocery list or what our response is going to be when we get the moment to interrupt the conversation. Now, my mother-in-law, she was truly one of those people that listened with love. When you spoke to her, she would stop what she was doing, she would put everything aside, and she would make eye contact with you. And she never once interrupted, and she never once looked like she was just waiting there for the right moment to interject whatever it was she wanted to say. And when you were finished speaking, she would take the time to ask you questions about what you had just talked about, if she needed clarification, whatever it was. And she'd remember. There were times we had conversations only to have her weeks, sometimes even months later, ask me about it. Oh, we talked about, such and such. How did that turn out? She would just ask me, and I knew that she had listened. Now, she made her transition in September of 2016, but I carry that with me because it was a true gift. And thinking back to that continues to bring me joy even to this day. It can also bring us joy when we're on the other side of it all, and we, like Shirley, my mother-in-law, we listen with love. Shirley loved being there to listen. It made her happy. It made her feel joyous to show that she truly cared. That's one of the things that brought her joy. And how can we ever truly get to know another person unless we make the decision to listen with love? How can we truly know the difference it will make in the life of another? Just like that is something I will never forget with her. She made a difference in my life. How do we know that we can't make that same difference? Until we truly listen with love. Now, Shirley did that, and when she did, she helped spread joy because I knew, and whoever else was talking to her in that moment knew that there was somebody who truly cared, somebody who truly listened. And to me, that made all the difference in the world to me at that time, and it's something that I still miss even to this day. So I invite you to do this next time. The next time somebody invites you to conversation, really just stop to listen. Don't just do it halfway. Don't think about the grocery list or the things that you need to do when you get home. Go all in and truly listen with love. And you cannot help but spread joy when you truly listen with love. Now, our Advent booklet also mentions spreading joy by making a difference. And honestly, I don't even know where to begin with this one. Because all we have to do is look around us here in this congregation. Our holiday gift drive, porch light, other organizations that we support. And that's only the church as a whole. What about those things that we each individually contribute to? Do you think we make a difference when we do those things, when we contribute to those things? Do you also think that when it's done with love, we spread joy? So our booklet also mentions to anticipate opportunities to beam a smile. And no, Jonathan, I'm not talking about beaming up in Star Trek. beaming with a smile. But we all have those days, and I'm sure you can relate, where we want to do anything but smile, kind of like what Pete was talking about this morning. He didn't wake up feeling joy. Maybe the alarm didn't go off. The dog yacked up his breakfast all over the couch. And Mindy knows I speak from experience on that one. But the clean pair of jeans that you want to wear that are still in the dryer, you find out they're only half dry. And those things don't make me want to smile. And it makes my day feel like it's going to just go downhill from there. And I've often caught myself on those days thinking, oh no, it's going to be one of those days where everything goes wrong. And you know what? It does. So I've said it once here, and I'm going to say it again because it's core here at Unity. Thoughts held in mind produce after their kind. So what if instead, on those days, I changed it to, oh yeah, it's one of those days where everything is going to make me smile. I like that one better. And I promise to try it if you all will too. So our booklet also mentions that we spread joy by whispering a blessing and encouraging others, or another. So again, this just goes back to showing another person that we care. It's taking the time to truly look at another person, look them in the eye, letting them know, I see you. All right, now, we're going to do something. Now, if you've been here for our first 3 Sundays of Advent, you've experienced our little Kickstart Meditations that we've been putting in there at the end. And these are short meditations that are based on our Unity 12 powers. And they're there to remind us of who we are and just to give us a little jump start on the parts of our true nature that we talk about and that we remember during Advent. Those things such as faith, peace, love, and finally today, joy or zeal. Now, I mentioned earlier that we don't have a 12 power that's specific to joy, but there is one for zeal. So I'm now going to ask, are you all willing? All right, and as we know, it's not jumping jacks. You're not committing yourself to getting up and doing something crazy. All right, well, if you're all willing, let's do this. Let's just close our eyes for just a moment. Just relax. Just relax and breathe. And just for a moment, enjoy resting your eyes on the dark field of velvety blackness into which you seem to be gazing. Now allow your attention to go to the back of your neck and just let it rest there for a moment, like a soft golden circle of light. And then think silently to yourself, the Christ within me is quickening, baptizing and training my faculty of zeal, represented by the disciple Simon. Immediately you should feel a sense of peace and easing of tension, and your breathing may even respond by getting deeper and more rhythmic. Perhaps there will even be a sigh of relief and release. Now silently affirm to yourself, I am motivated from within by wisdom and love. I do that which is before me to do with unflagging zeal and enthusiasm. I work with the spring and speed of spirit, easily, unhurried, and gracefully. I am grateful. And you can open your your eyes whenever you're ready. So as you feel your holiday joy this week, I invite you to remember that joy doesn't have to be felt for just a day or just a season. It's not one of those things that only comes around once a year. Joy is instead a part of who I am and a part of who you are, a part of who we all are. And we can experience this part of our true nature at any time, any place, in any season. We just have to make a choice. And within that choice, we must remember. We must never forget who or what we really are. Now, before we leave today, I want to read a poem that was contributed in the book, 1 Degree South of God, by our very own Catherine. And Catherine, I would say your last name, but I'm afraid I will botch it. So, Catherine Grace. And I wanted to leave you with this. It's called Eagle Training. Let me see the vastness. Let me fill my lungs. Let me fill my wings. Let me walk forward off the cliff. What is under these wings? What is it like to abide in the sky? Sit empty. Sit open. Be the bigness. Be the openness. Let your body be lifted. Soar into the sky. Soar among the clouds. Soar among the infinite. Instigate your own freedom. You are like the wind taking the eagle. Remember to soar with your divine joy. And I wish you all a happy holiday-filled season with joy. Namaste.